Thank you, Leicester. As I said earlier, we're planning to restage a meeting which took place on August the 2nd, 1914 in this marketplace. In fact, there were two meetings, one held in the morning and one held in the evening. At that time, war had not been declared, and that Britain stood really on the brink. And the meeting that was held to oppose Britain's entry into the war. And the people who were on the platform at the time were largely local people who thought that Britain's entry into the war would be a terrible mistake. And I think, as you'll hear, their words have stood the test of time. So for the next 4 years, you're going to hear a lot about the bravery of the people in the trenches, the troops in the trenches. But what we're here to celebrate this afternoon is the courage of the people who determined to speak out against the war, who dared to oppose what they saw as a futile and senseless war. And the speakers of that meeting remained steadfast in their opposition to the First World War, and are not afraid to come down here to the marketplace and voice their opposition, even though they were frequently heckled and sometimes run off the platform. But there were many people in Leicester who opposed the First World War, not least one of its MP, Ramsay MacDonald, who spoke in Parliament saying that the war was a mistake, that he thought it was wrong because he thought Britain was not in danger, and he said history would have seen it to be a mistake and seen it to be wrong. And unfortunately, people don't, I think, credit MacDonald with having that amount of foresight. Also, Leicester was one of the towns in Britain which had the lowest rate of volunteers. One of the reasons why conscription had to be brought in 1916. The Leicester Trades Council is the organisation which is sponsoring this event, and I'm very pleased that they're doing so because they're one of the two remaining organisations still existing who oppose the war. It's the Trades Council and the Society of Friends who opposed the First World War, and they're both in existence today. We know now that the First World War was a military disaster and a human catastrophe. It left 16 million dead, 20 million wounded, and the incompetence of the statesmen who got us into the war was only matched by the incompetence of the generals who conducted the war. It wasn't a war to end all wars. It wasn't even a victory for democracy. Britain may have won the war, but at a terrible cost, not just in human life, but in economics. Britain was saddled with a huge debt, and the treaty which was signed at the end of the war, the Versailles Treaty, merely laid the foundation for future conflicts. Now, at that meeting on the 2nd of August, the principal speaker was Alderman George Banton. He was a carpenter by trade. He tramped Britain in search of work in his youth, but had become a Liberal, and then he joined the Independent Labour Party in the 1890s. And after the war he became an MP and was later Mayor of Leicester. So it's very fitting that we have Sir Peter Soulsby, also a former MP, and our Mayor, to read his words.